start with the airport. And we've all been distributed some information regarding the airport. And Stu, I think this was done by DOT, yes?
Yes, they did Maine DOT had a consultant evaluate general aviation, economic impact statewide. And then they also examined each individual airport to include Lincoln. And this is just a kind of a snapshot of the contribution statewide, but also locally to the economic well-being, I guess.
Based on numbers in 2022.
Yes, yep.
Can you explain some of the numbers? I'm not quite sure I'm familiar with, for example, the portion of it that is directly attributed to us.
And I wasn't involved in the developing of it. We had a consultant. The part that that we did was the number of jobs that were impacted by the operations of the
So when you say 5,311,000, what's that mean?
well, they looked at it, the overall economic impact, and then separated it out by employment and taxes, state and local taxes like fuel tax and real estate tax and stuff like that.
Right, so did the airport contribute 5.3 million to the economy?
The effects of having the airport here in Lincoln through whether it be
So because we have an airport, we generated 5.3 million in economy somewhere in the town.
yeah, the operations of the airport would contribute, and some of the figures are sales of aircraft. PK Float sells.
That would make sense.
They sell about 50 a year through a brokerage process that they have. They also are a manufacturing firm that manufactures and sells.
Yeah, well, that would make sense, but
Yeah.
does that type of sale make up the 5.3, or is there other parts that?
No,
Go
I
into
think
that.
it's a kind of a global number of all of the different contributions that having the airport offers to the local economy.
Okay. I'm just not familiar with those numbers. I've never seen it presented this way before. But
That's one of the reasons that this study was done, was that there are a lot of the state itself, Maine DOT has an aviation branch, and the aviation branch focuses on commercial aviation and general aviation.
Right,
Lincoln comes under the general aviation umbrella,
right.
and they did this for the purpose of trying to understand what impact the airports have locally.
Right.
You know, certainly, I meet with them next week. If there's specific questions, I'd be glad.
Do you know who the consultant was put this together?
I think it's listed. I can find out, but I have the full report and it indicates in there. I don't remember who they were specifically.
I'm assuming it's probably one of the engineering firms that design the airports and stuff.
They had both marketing people involved and, you know, airport planners.
Yeah, I'd just be interested to find out. That's a big number for Lincoln, 5.3 million to generate.
In conversation with PK Floats on the brokerage of aircraft, in the calendar year, I believe 24, well, it may have been 23 actually, they brokered 50 aircraft with a value as low as 20,000 and as high as 2 million. So, you know, selling a few aircraft that are valued like that, it would very quickly have that kind of impact.
Okay, I'd be just interested in where the numbers came from.
I'm
And
sure, and I'm sure they could explain it, and if need be, I can,
so you think like the 29 jobs would be directly related to PK floats? Or?
well, there's PK, there's other, there's the maintenance firm that, the maintenance shop that Keith has, and then there are other related jobs that come and go. For the PK is the largest employer at the jail, for sure.
So the airport is a critical tool to their business.
Yeah, I would say yes.
Yeah.
Not speaking for Pat, but I'm pretty sure they are. They get a lot of aircraft in and out either for the brokerage part of it and also for coming in for maintenance and fitting, doing the boat fittings. And they have FAA certified floats for a couple makes of aircraft that they're the only ones that can provide them. And one of the manufacturers out of Utah, so anybody that buys a plane out of Utah that wants floats for their aircraft have to come here. So, it does bring from, I didn't realize, how involved they were in brokering and selling aircraft. And it's kind of a silent economic driver out here. But it surprised me when I heard how active they were.
Well, like, for example, if they sell floats for a plane that's in Texas, they're not necessarily going to use the airport. Basically, they make away from the manufacturer, PK floats, load them on a truck and take them to Texas and mount them on there.
Actually, it's my experience in the time that I've been here that more often they come here for the fitting. For the fitting of the aircraft. They'll fly here,
Interesting.
get it done and then fly from here. But, I'm sure they ship some, but more often than not, the planes come here.
Mhm.
Explain a little bit, is there like a landing fee or what brings in income?
No, we do not have a landing fee. I mean, we sell fuel. We try to maintain the price competitive with other airports so that we get people that come here for fuel, but at the same time, generate about $1 a gallon of income. The town owns a hangar that is rented pretty much, it's full 6 months of the year. In the winter, in the wintertime, and that generates, we just increased that monthly rate in the last fee increase. And then since my time, we've picked up the ground, the town bought the ground underneath the Laopa properties, and they, instead of paying a lease amount to the organization, they now pay a lease to the town. And then they get, they're obviously the hangars attached to the value.
So this is something that's up where all the hangars are. It looks like there's 3.7 acres and all the hangars are lumped into an LLC as one unit.
No, it's owned by the town now.
On the town site, it says it's owned by Lincoln Airplane Owners.
We just recently purchased it.
And on there it shows it, is there a separate tax fee for the hangars or is that, on here it only shows $1,394 for the 18 hangars, even without the tax fee.
Yeah, I don't,
The hangars are taxed separately to the owners of the hangar.
So the land is.
The land.
Now it's the town.
And that was something that they had to do for the FAA grants to continue.
well, we ran into trouble where the FAA was going to delist the airport and, basically stop any federal funding or grants because of the private access to the public policy. Because we're not going to maintain federal funding without the aircraft count. And the FAA rules those aircraft were 20 something aircraft, the F-25, that they were on private property, so they can't be counted. So the town moved forward, purchased the land, so now they increase the aircraft count. We're no longer in trouble with the FAA. The funding is not at this point in jeopardy. Yeah. It's a,
What does that do? I can't remember the vehicles this years ago. If they delist or anything, we could be on the hook paying back
yes,
all the previous money, which was
Yes.
millions, and we'd be still on the hook to keep it up to shape for like 20 years out of pocket. But
and when you get a grant, they have grant assurances, which are like a list of rules that you have to follow. And if you fail to follow the grant assurances, you can end up in a position where they could ask for the money back. And the runway itself was close to a $4 million project, which they funded, a majority of it. So by the town purchasing that property underneath those hangars, that's now airport property. They're all included in the aircraft count, and it took us away from any problems with them. And it gives us an opportunity, because there are some lots that have not been developed, hangars haven't been built. They're available for people to come in and construct. And then the other lot, in fact, this week we're finishing clearing the land. And that we already have a half a dozen people on the hangar wait list. And we have a couple very serious individuals that are looking to construct fairly large hangars in Lincoln. Now, what that'll do is that'll increase the revenue from leasing of the square footage of the land underneath the hangar. And then based on the size or the value of the hangar, that there would be tax income from that real estate tax.
Now that the town owns it, that's when there'll be something to lease the increased saying that it's moved back.
Yes, yep. Yeah, and that, I anticipate, that we will probably adjust that over time. But it was really important that at the time that we were able to successfully negotiate the transfer of the property. Initially, we planned on doing it as a transfer the land to the town, and we'll give you a free lease into the future to, because you're already there, and to try to match the value of the land. And we worked with the FAA for like 14 months, and then somebody decided somewhere in the FAA that we couldn't do that. So they stopped us, and we had to do it. But they ended up awarding FAA land acquisition funding to pay for it. So it worked out. It worked out in the end.
How did you come up with the price per square foot of the building?
Yeah, yes, yeah, and the initial agreement when we were going to do the swap was a lease fee of like $100 a year per lot. And I believe that's 24 lots. We tried to stay with that because that was the original agreement that the town had with the organization, the nonprofit organization. Both Rick and I didn't want to change that. The FAA wasn't, they thought it should be higher, but, and what I think, what the plan is that that'll slowly be increased over time. But we're at about the same square foot. It's like 5 to 7 cents a square foot, and that's very similar to other airports for land.
So what's our estimated return on investment or purchasing the land by returning through the lease? Is it 5 year, 10 year?
Well,
break
that-
even?
it would probably be even longer than that.
Well, how much did it cost us to buy the land?
It was 55,000 for Leopa and 60,000 for the other. And we ended up getting FAA grants to pay for both of them.
5%, is that?
5%, yes. And they also, when going through that grant process, they approved any appraisal fees and attorney's fees, and any environmental impact studies, any of the associated costs with getting the land. They paid, FAA pays 90%, the state main DOT pays 5%, and the town pays the remaining 5%.
It would cost the town $2,000.
That's it, 100,000, 110,000, roughly, for that.
Yeah, it was I think we got $160,000 in grants. So, I mean, it was minimal. So if you look at it from that standpoint, we'll pay that back very quickly, in a couple of years.
We've got 160,000 grants, which the town is supposed to 5%.
5%.
Yes.
And then we have lease agreements at the rate of $100 a year.
There's 24 lots there.
$400 a year.
And the other one, we haven't, the other one hasn't been completely, the planning stage is actually something that we're looking at for the next fiscal year. And we're looking at a planning grant from the FAA to develop the other.
Are these, what are they, an acre or more as far as what the hangars are? On the
No, they're, because that's about a 4-acre parcel. It's broken up into 24 lots of equal size.
So not very big lots then.
The space they're on is very small. Each is very small.
I was just wondering if the $100 is a fair price a year.
The Millinocket is, I looked at Old Town Millinocket as Bangor, there are so many different business agreements there that it doesn't even, you can't compare that to here. But Old Town and Millinocket are very similar in their cost per square foot.
Is there a figure of a budget for the airport? It's that anywhere near breaking even, or you know what it's costing us a year?
Actually, no. There aren't enough revenue streams right now to cover the cost of the operations. Now, there's a couple of things that'll happen over time. Is we've been doing a lot of major projects in an effort to, like the runway project, the apron project. We renovating a small building down near the city hangar. And then we're trying to develop both pieces of land better. We get a $150,000 entitlement from the FAA every year. They will take that first for projects, but if our projects are finished, then it can be used for operations. There'll be a day when we'll get to the point where the entitlement funds can be used to offset airport operations. But we are not there yet. We have quite a bit of work to do.
So right now, the people that have planes, they're paying something for the hangars, and they're gonna be paying something for the lots, but anything for an airplane that comes in from out of town that doesn't have connections, there's no fee.
It would be,
Where would it come from?
it would be fuel. If, they have fuel, because a lot of them were price competitive. Landing fees, I don't think are, in general aviation, are suggested, and they may not even be allowed.
I looked at some of the other small airports and couldn't see it.
Yeah, I'm a pilot and I fly all over the country, and I've never paid a landing fee. Now, if I went to, Bangor didn't buy fuel, they'd attack it, or if I tried to go into Logan, which would be really crazy in the small plane I fly, so I stay right out of there. But if you impact commercial aviation in any way, they'll hit you with a land.
The guards still paying to do their touch and goes and whatnot, or?
I'm not aware that they do it all.
I've never known that they paid.
Vocational school, I was told that they were paying 50 or 60,000.
Never. I've been here
Told a story.
16 years and I have never seen income come in from
So there's nothing.
the guard.
Yeah, they use it for night operations. It's actually safer for them to come up here than it is in the town.
Opportunities there.
I'm not aware that that's even an option.
Do they notify you saying they're gonna do touch and goes, or you just don't know?
No, they come when they, whenever they're training, they come through. It's an uncontrolled airport, so under FAA law and rules and regulations, so there's no requirement for anybody to even have a radio to, talk to other pilots. So, yeah, it's uncontrolled airspace.
Like, when Public Works says plows, is that charged to the airport, or that comes out like Dennis's?
We have a line in there for, in the budget for wages.
On page 92.
That's to amount to proof,
Unchecked capital.
that's to pay for the wages that 0001. That's for public works employees and rec employees. The airport has a piece of equipment that we did quite a bit of work to two budgets ago, and that was provided by the FAA, but it's operated by Public Works.
The tractor, the plow?
Yeah.
Is there any place to put that plow on the cover? 'Cause it's a mess.
We don't have, I mean, we Dennis will, do what he can is to put it under cover. And I have talked to the FAA about a snow removal building or a maintenance building, but because of the age of the tractor, they will not authorize a grant. So, surprising to me, they will authorize the purchase of a new piece of equipment in the near future. And when the town receives the new piece of equipment, they qualify for funds for a building. But they won't do it the other way around.
It's too bad to have something that costs what that does and just have to leave it at somebody.
Yeah, we try to get it in the big hangar if there's room, but that we have a lot of people that have float planes that look to store them in the wintertime, that 6 months that they're not float flying. And a lot of those are commitments into the future. So once they're in there, we don't have room for much.
Rec department still store a lot of stuff in the
We actually, we moved it to a small T hangar that was on that piece of property when you drive in on the left. That small hangar that was there, That has some structural concerns, and I'm not comfortable renting it to an airplane owner and having something happen and then the town having to buy an airplane they don't want. So we are using that for storage of lawnmowers and their kayaks. It's fine, it is fine for that. It would not be a good idea to rent it out for an aircraft.
I'm looking at the 23-24 budget, and on wages, it went over 186%. And then this year's budget, I know we're not 100% at this point, but as of whenever this was printed, I think in April, it looked like it's 133%. Do you know what's happening there with the wages?
Maybe Dennis can help on that. Probably just the number of storms.
Depending on the amount of snow, the amount of times the guys go down and plow in the airport.
So that's just basically snow removal, those wages?
Most of them, yeah. I try to do the mowing myself in the summertime. Just contribute where I can, when I can. And occasionally the rec department goes over there. Most of that expenditure would be the snow. We are required to maintain an active runway as best we can. I mean, there are circumstances and storms where Dennis will close the runway for 24 hours so that they can clean it. And that's not uncommon, and that's not a problem. But we couldn't just leave it on, unplanned.
Right. But it's probably not like a highway where you have to get out there and certain.
No, Dennis's policy, and I agree with him, is he does the community first, and the airport last. And that's fine, because during those situations, general aviation is not going to be flying.
So historically, has that been the case that we're always over budget on snow removal or the wages for snow removal?
I can't say that we're over every year. We haven't kept track of these for the last couple of years. For that, I think that the numbers were not accurate. 3 or 4 years, we kept these numbers slightly over. It's an estimate at the beginning.
Well, I'm just wondering, I mean, you're only asking for $186 increase in wages. Are we just kidding ourselves in that regards? Or, I mean, you gotta look at it both ways.
So I think that increase would reflect the change in the hourly rate of personnel that we are.
I would assume we adjusted that last year because
But there's an annual union wage adjustment.
not 33%, I don't think,
No, I wouldn't think that would cover all of that.
or 86%. I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there. I'm just reading the numbers I've been given, that's all.
So you want to increase that line? Match the.
Just trying to get to the bottom of it, if it's because we're continually underestimating the hours needed for snow removal, because I know the year before last, it was a fairly light year. I hardly used my snow equipment for removal. This last year, I wasn't here, so I don't know how bad the snow was. My son plowed, and he said it was a little bit more, but it still wasn't even enough for him to get out there with snowmobiles. So I just don't know how much. You know, are we continually going over on light storms, and when we get a real bad winter, it's going to be 3 times that amount? Or I'm just asking questions. That's all.
Usually the way that Dennis's crew approaches that, the airport isn't, they don't start the plowing process until the storm has ceased. So it's not the same as clearing Main Street and keeping it clear.
Right.
So
That's a
you're
good
only,
thing.
you're only gonna do that perhaps one time
Right.
for that storm, not multiple times.
Right. And with his equipment, whether it's 2 inches or 10 inches, he's still probably gonna clear it in the same amount of time because his equipment can handle that
Yes,
type of
yes,
load.
yeah. So for us at the airport, the size of the storm doesn't.
Right.
The only difference would be is, there are touch-up times where you have to take the tractor out
Right.
to uncover the runway light.
Right.
The aviation fuel, some figure 52,000 is probably what you bring in gross, but you probably got 40 something you paid for the fuel, so.
Yeah, it's generally, it has, because we try to get 8,000 gallons at a time, and we get one, try to, at least one load a year, and lately, it's kind of up and down as to,
The 52,000 is probably what you're grossing.
Yeah, yes.
You're paying a big piece of that for it, so.
Yeah. Because we're at right around $6 a gallon sales. So that would be for 8,000 gallons. That's what we-
You're actually maybe paying 1,000 or something like that.
Yes, we should be making at least $1. I try to keep it at $1 a gallon.
Yeah, that's what you said last year, it was $1 a gallon.
And it does fluctuate, and sometimes if we hit that dip just right, maybe perhaps a little bit better. I try to keep that competitive with other airports, at par with others or below, hopefully a little bit below. To encourage traffic.
I say if we're getting 8,000 gallons, $6 a gallon, I mean, we don't have to, we haven't expended anything this year, the previous year. Spent 50,000, 651, so we wouldn't even be covering our costs. But we're charging. So we're not breaking even.
Well,
I mean, granted, you have a little bit in the, like an extra $1,200, but yeah, we're not even covering our
I think,
costs.
we haven't had, I'm not aware that I've had a year where the cost of the fuel has exceeded what the revenue is.
I see on the revenue this year that this current year, we've taken in 30,000. We haven't expended anything. So you're expecting
We still have, last time I checked, we were around 6,000 gallons left. So we have quite a bit of fuel.
Yeah, I think he got the fuel like right at the end of last fiscal year. And that's what we've taken in as of last week.
Okay.
So, and he
so
still
essentially we have
got,
52,000 unexpended. We don't expect to spend anything near that then.
he got 6,000
Yeah,
gallons.
6,000.
Yeah, we've still got quite a bit left, yeah. We'll certainly get through the fall without having to have it.
Because ideally, the way it should be, I won't do this, but revenue should be put into a separate account to only fund the fuel, so you can't spend more than taking for revenue. We're not budgeting anything for taxpayers. Ideally, that'd be the way, it'd be self-sustaining.
And I think
Because
it
if
is.
we're budgeting 52,000, we already have 30,000 in the account. We haven't spent any 52. We shouldn't have to spend any of that if we're making money on every sale. Should be.
It is a totally separate account because we are getting that income into there. So that
I mean, that's
bank
something for the
account is
council
totally
to,
separate.
something for the council to decide, but that's how it should work. And then you could knock $50,000 right at it. Not quite 50,000 because you still have the fuel for the.
I would have to run that by the auditors too and see how they felt about that, operating it that way.
Because essentially right now,
Yeah,
I mean, you're raising 50,000 from taxpayers, but then again, you're offsetting it on revenue, but. Right. Budget, it's all self-contained. If they allow it. Yeah.
the revenue basically would be the dollar a gallon. It wouldn't be the expense of buying the fuel. Eventually, you sell it all. Basically, revenues.
And that would allow for like a, where it fluctuates. Because I mean, when we first put it in, I mean, I was on the council when we first put the fuel thing in, and I think we said 5 or 10 year payback. We spent like $60,000 or $70,000 in that ballpark putting this in. We expected to make quite a bit of money off the fuel, but I don't think we ever made that much.
I think not yet.
But I mean, I think if it's self-contained, you don't have to raise money to the budget for it, then that's a plus. Something to discuss in this.
Well, like I said, I'd like to run it by the auditors first.
Yeah.
Because there are best practices and other rules that have to be followed.
Were there any capital items for the airport?
Yes. Last page.
How do we do with this? Then it's 63,000.
One, there's two items that I put on there. One is the replace the airport beacon. Right now, that's incandescent. We want to switch to LED and has a longer lifespan, and we're spending $600 to change the light bulb. You have to certified climbers to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that system is, we got one out right now, and we've already expended this fiscal year's funds. So that's what the first item is. The second one is the master plan for the airport. Hasn't been updated since, the last master plan was done in 2000, and that's part of the planning process. And we're scheduled to work on that. That's an FAA grant that FAA will fund 90% of that, and DOT will do 5%, and the town does 5%.
Would they be doing that with the beacon system too? Is there currently not, or is that'd be our?
We haven't, I haven't been able to find any grant money for that, to replace the beacon. That's a motorized unit that we'll have to purchase, and they're about $12,000, and then pay somebody to install it. And hopefully that'll reduce the cost of climbing, and the bulbs themselves are almost $60 a piece, and they don't last. They won't go a year. And the LED will, thousands and thousands of hours of operation without, any maintenance. And there was one item that just draw your attention to, page 93, the pilots building renovation. Last year I got $5,000, and we did a bunch of renovation work, and initially talked to the manager about asking for the same amount again for updating the heating system, either a heat pump or an heaters for the building. Right now, the system that's in there is not operational. And I just got some of the final bids back or estimates back, and it's right around 10,000. So I undershot by that.
So I have told him to put in the 10 because that's the reality.
What kind of system is it now? What will it be?
Now, we have a very old propane hot water heater, and the propane furnace is not operational. It doesn't work.
It worked this winter?
We didn't use it this winter. We closed the building.
Okay, so
We drained the water. and
drain
closed
the
it.
water, all that stuff.
Yes.
Do we need heating in all the time?
The flight operations are enough that we would like to extend the life of, or the use of the building, into at least 10 months. And you can certainly scale it back in January, February, when things slow down, although we had, 100 flight operations this year in January, so. That can depend on weather, yes.
How often do people actually use that?
Well, it is a poorly placed building, and it was never intended to be used as a terminal. We don't have a terminal right now. That's one of the grants that I've been year after year applying for and trying to get, and we're going to apply for it again this session when it comes open. But it does get used for a lot of times in the spring, summer, and fall. People fly in. What we are trying to do is we switched it around from what originally was designed for the campground is now set up a little bit better for if somebody gets caught in the weather, they have shelter. So we took out a bathroom, and took out exterior doors and switched it around. And trying to better utilize the space that we have available. But it's poorly placed for what the airport truly needs.
Really probably should be on that end of the thing.
And that's the plan. Is to put, if we ever get awarded a terminal grant, we'll put it up by the gas plants. From that.
Is the campground part still used or?
No.
Campground has been underwater enough times that the water system
We'll
has
get
been flooded with untested water and the electrical system has been flooded.
aircraft that'll fly in and camp, either transitioning through Maine or they'll stop here. But the FAA has told us it cannot be used for public use.
How many winters have you gone without using?
All the winters are there.
10 years?
Well, yeah, probably. I don't, I've been here 4 years, and we shut it down in the fall and opened it up this time. We've been doing that. It's been quite a while.
So, it's not a real big drop to put heat in there at this point.
We'd like to utilize it, more months of the year. To do that, we would need,
What was it doing?
just have it available.
Somebody was
That is one use, but the other use would be just availability of it for, if most pilots know that what's open and what's not. And, the fact that it's been closed in the wintertime, you just don't have that. You don't have a bathroom, you don't have shelter, you don't have a place to park your aircraft. Now we have the tie downs so people can safely secure their aircraft if they're gonna stay any period of time, overnight or short term. We need some sort of place where they can.
There, like a requirement what you need for a pass building? Because just I know honestly it's not been like 20 late street
Yeah.
years, but
I think yes, if it's with grant related, yes, but.
I just like to on the off trying to get grants. One of those little, okay, it wouldn't be anything spectacular. We do sheds, like, they're, people use it for camps or
Yeah,
whatever.
and we've actually discussed that as a possibility.
You wouldn't need a giant one, you just need something decent, but I mean, you're talking like 5,000 or 10,000 for that. And then if you wanted to put heat in it or something, you probably need to run electric to it, but something where you could put it at the other end of the airport, get rid of that one, instead of, just my thought is throwing $10,000 into this one where you want to replace it, like if we put $10,000 into heat pump, then you do get a grant or something. Essentially wasted all that install cost there, and now you gotta go spend it again. Granted, it might be grant funds, but if there's not.
And we have talked about getting one of the small Amish sheds, but then you need bathroom facility and water, which there isn't any at that end of the winter.
Okay.
There is a hangar that has come up, now that you mentioned that, there's a hangar that's come up for sale that has a small area that you could turn into an office and shelter right at the range, the apron, and that has water.
How much is that hangar?
I would have to, I've talked to the owner of it, just inquiring. And I'd have to approach him to see if he's serious, but it wouldn't be a lot more than what they're asking for here.
I would,
Maybe twice that.
I would rather, just spend the funds doing something like that than build something into a building that needs to be replaced.
I'm just seeing a building that's not where it should be, and put money into it. Maybe worth, we keep saying, we're checking to put something up on the.
Or again, if you get the hangar, then and it has what you need, then
Oh,
and then you have space.
And I would absolutely welcome the opportunity to pursue that, and I understand your concern. It's not a good idea. I mean, the likelihood, the terminal grants are extremely competitive, and they only release a few, but Dexter got one, Eastport got one, Princeton got one, eventually Lincoln's gonna get one. But I just, I would have hoped it was last year, not next year.
Is it a lottery or is it the quality of the grant? We need to maybe get somebody that does our
No, it's just,
better grants.
I'm not really sure what the criteria is. I know there's a couple of airports that got them because they were close to the border and could be utilized as like a alternate for immigration, customs enforcement, for checkpoint.
I know those people that's what they're experts in, is writing grants. They know how to dot i's and cross t's.
Yeah, and we have Phil Tanner as the consultant for the airport, and they do airport planning all over.
Right. Now, one of the big ones.
Yeah, and they're the ones that have been submitting applicants. And they've represented to them that we don't even have a terminal. Some places have terminals and they're going to replace them. We don't have them. So,
If the hangar thing doesn't work out, the deal that you would like to get, what about the Volk School of Region 3, where the appropriate title is? What about them building a shed? and us buying it from them, wouldn't that be cheaper than trying to get one of the other ones? Because you see them out for sale every year, they have a couple of sheds that they make. Could we give them a design and it, you know, I think that would be a cheaper way to get it. If the first pick doesn't work.
It would be consider.
I don't wish to discuss that idea
Okay.
in the current setting, but I will talk to you about it after.
Just an idea, so, fine.
I guess for the council purpose, if you could get maybe a figure, and do something up there on the hangar before I put money into the other, I go forward,
I could approach it, he talked about selling it, and I don't know how serious he is, but I can certainly ask him.
I just know in previous years, the council wasn't, spending money on that building at all. What we put in money, but I don't know if it's still the case, but that might make something, to move forward.
I haven't seen it for 3 or 4 years, but it was rough then.
Like I said, I'd rather put money towards something that's gonna last another 20.
Something that would have a future.
So I just look to whatever direction Mr. Bronson gives me.
How does this set with some of the other generations throughout the state as far as providing shelter year-round for pilots who have no commit?
Most every place I go to, open year-round.
The ones I used to fly into didn't have anything.
Which one was that?
Rangeley,
Rangeley? Yeah, Rangeley has, actually, they have a beautiful setup up there. Yeah. They extended the runway. Jackman's runway.
I'd be curious to know, because I think what they said, 29 general aviations in the state of Maine. I'd like to know how we line up with those guys as far as
The terminal building,
yeah, the whole facilities.
I think we may be the only one now that doesn't have. Eastport had one provided by a private individual. That's being in the process of being replaced, brand new, at $1.4 million. Dexter, there's got one that was 1.4 or 5 million. They had a small one.
These are FAA grants that
Yes.
these are getting through.
They're terminal grants. They come a little bit different than some of the grants we've already got here in Lincoln. The terminal grant is a separate lot of money.
You mentioned you keep applying for them.
Yeah.
We just haven't hit the lottery yet.
That's right.
How big of a terminal are they building for? I mean, I know.
Eastport's is about 2,000 square feet, which is twice what we. And I wouldn't even ask for on that size. It's way more. We need something practical. And the Trias has one that was built. And that one, I think, is 850 square feet, very practical building. That's the one that I've talked to Mr. Bronson about and have, encouraged our planners or consultants to, that's, we don't need a large one, that kind of one.
Is Bahamas commercial or
Yeah,
general?
they do both. They have scheduled their service there.
Do they charge a fee for landing?
No, not for general aviation. They may for commercial, but, the times I've been down. No. There isn't any place in Maine, Bangor will charge you a fee if you don't buy fuel.
Or the jet one?
Portland has a handle.
Anything else on airport?
All set with that?
We're all set with that?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Check back if you want any questions. I need to follow up.
Yep. You are for this week.
Have a good night.
You too.
So next we have Dennis Bond, who is Public Works, Transfer Station, and Landfill. He can do those in whatever order he likes.
Good evening, all. Holly, Stacy. Alan, I haven't met you, Dennis Mullen.
Oh, I know your boy.
I was just saying, I'm sure you have run across him at one point or another.
I was gonna ask you how, going and going.
They're succeeding both very well. Barbers, they're both barbers.
Barbara.
They've been to school, they're barbering. Justin owns his own business.
Wow. That's awesome.
I'm a Lincoln.
Yeah.
He may eventually evolve down here. He's covering the Millinocket scene right now.
Oh,
Cool. I enjoyed your boy football. I coached him.
Okay.
Both of them good boys. Public Works or?
you'll start Public Works. I think the calculation might be wrong once you actually get into it, because it says last year was 319,000 and then it's 416. But on the front page, it says 409 or 401 and then 416, so.
There's gotta be a formula that's messed up on there.
Just in case anyone sees that, I don't think that's calculation's correct, so.
There's gonna be a small raise in the wages
Yeah.
because of the collective bargaining agreement.
Sometimes hard numbers get put in there. It should be 401, 747 for last year. But up here, it was not.
I think the request is 416 for this year.
It is,
Yep.
yes. It's just, this number in here needs to be fixed.
See vehicle maintenance going down, is that because we're leasing some now? So
That's correct. It's gone down every year last 2 or 3 years. And I expect it, frankly, George, I expect it to go down again next year.
So it's working, giving us a more consistent yearly price to pay and less surprise.
It keeps our vehicles out on the job site also.
Something I didn't realize until I got the leases and looked through and I talked to Dennis. Correct me if I'm wrong. At the end of the lease, what the lease payment is, we can turn that back in for that value, so it's 30 to 50,000 depending on what it is, or guaranteed, so that's a pretty good chunk off the price of it. It's enough, it makes a difference.
The leases guarantee us a year's payment as trade-in value at the end of the lease. So if we choose to do that and turn that vehicle in, they give us a minimum of what we will pay them per year for it. I think that's a pretty good deal. If we decide to keep it, then we pay that. It belongs to us.
Are you still seeing the like big increases in, I mean, because I know when I first started on council, it was, 90,000 all in on a plow truck. Now it's like what, 150, 200? Is it still kind of going up 10,
270, the
10,
last one.
270? That's done a few more.
And it took us George, it took us 2 years from when we ordered it to when we received it. And the back truck also took nearly 2 years to obtain.
I understand the back truck, it's a special equipment, but the other truck, was anything special about it?
Nothing special. It was a standard spec plow truck. It was just, that's the industry right now is so far behind the chassis and then the engines. Took 2 years to, so I ordered it through Freightliner for us to take delivery of.
Was it just Freightliner that get impacted or all the truck industry?
I think all of them are impacted. The last two that we bought were Freightliners, so we were suffering the same delays. The back truck's a Freightliner chassis also.
That puts it in perspective for people in like, in 10 years, how much the price has gone up. 90,000, completely kitted out, everything you need, 70,000. And you don't have a lot, you don't have anything in it. That's the price. So.
It's amazing how much truck costs, but the year to want it, how much supply. It's
Another advantage of leasing is that we're able to spec the trucks at a little bit higher quality equipment, if you will. Before, we wanted the lowest, the most cost effective, which was honestly the cheapest. And now with the leasing, we're able to step up with the quality of gear.
And I would imagine one of the things with it too is going to be, because now everything's going electronic, computers all on it, that once you get the last lease payment, you're getting at it before any of the big issues are going to start hitting. And then
We have 6-year leases.
the other thing we talked about too, is if you didn't turn it back in, if you had a truck that went to 6 years and looked remarkably good, if you thought you could get more than the turn in, you could sell it.
or even again, like I said, keep it if you
Right.
get another 2 or 3 years at it.
If
for
it
low.
looks that good, you might get another year.
If it's, you don't think it's going to, like, engine dies, then
We've had a couple of engine failures. They're expensive. Replace an engine. Truck number one, for an example, a Wheeler, running fine, and the engine went out of it, and we got $10,000 for it. The value of it just sunk out of sight.
What's your average for mileage in each truck of the year?
Not a lot of miles, so maybe 12 or 15,000. Not a lot of miles.
but they're hard miles, right?
They're hard miles. These trucks perform in the worst environment you can imagine. We're the purveyors of it. We put it out there.
Mhm. Do you go out to bid or you just stay with Freightliner?
No, we put it out to bid. We put it out to bid. So Freightliner the last couple times has been, but we have a couple of internationals in the fleet also. Usually one or the other.
Mhm.
Western Star, there's one or two of those as well. Yeah. We went in a direction a couple of years ago. We wanted to get away from that Max Force engine. They were just the worst engine out there. And we had several of them. We wanted to get away from it. Yeah. So we spec Cummins out. So we do have a couple of Detroits.
And I'm assuming we probably had those ones because I was on council, but we kind of have a thing of whatever the lowest one is, that's what gets pushed through versus what's best for the cost of what's best.
We took possession of the transfer station rig. It came with a Detroit. We spec'd it out as a Cummins engine. It came as a Detroit with a Detroit engine, but we accepted it simply because to send it back within another year of getting it you know, the turnaround would have been another year on it, so we accepted that Detroit diesel. It's been good to us.
I see.
I probably already asked you this. On the lease, is the emission system, the DEF system, is that covered under the lease or is that on us?
It's covered to an extent. The particulate filters end up being us that we, and that's an expensive fix, but usually in the first 4 or 5 years, we don't have to worry with those.
Is it system failure, would that be?
System failures or manufacturing. We haven't had any system failures yet, but we have had particulate filters for everybody.
Do we have an obligation with the state to maintain those 18 miles, or do we get reimbursed by the state for doing that?
We get some reimbursement.
You know, does that show up on the revenue side, Melissa?
I don't know what reimbursement we're talking about.
LRAP funds.
Oh, yes, yes, it is. It's, under the state revenue. State and local DOT Europe funds. This year we collected 81,772.
What page you on, Melissa?
The very first page of the revenues, very first line.
You're up?
Yeah. It kind of fluctuates, so we try to, you know, estimate the best we can.
So we're proposing less this year than we got last year.
Yes, because it fluctuates every year. So I don't want to overestimate what we're going to get. The year before, I think it was only like 75,000. So if it continues on an upward trend, then we'll continue to increase that.
So what else besides the state-owned, 18-mile state-owned that do we get this funding for? Is there anything else, or is this just for that 18 miles?
The LRAP funds are for the 18 miles of maintenance on the roads, which I think does include the ditching and shoulder work that we do in addition to the plowing.
Okay, so it's maintenance and plowing.
Correct.
But we don't have to pave it.
We don't pave those roads. We plow those roads.
And ditching.
And shoulder work. Anything to do with the maintenance of the road, with the exception of capital paving.
Just be like the state aid road, like the Enfield Road.
Correct.
You don't do anything on it too, other than bring it in town.
That is correct.
So
Route 2 heading north, we plow out to turn around just a little bit past EH Downs. Route 2 heading south, the turnaround is right there in the rhythm access road.
So do you submit hours on your snow plowing to the state saying, okay, I spent this much time?
We don't. I fill out a form each year or once a year, how much we spent on ditching, how much we spent on paving, and break it down that way.
And so they don't tell you what roads to ditch, anything like that. That's up to you to do that. You
My
figure that
decision.
out. And if they're good at saying, no, that's too much, or as far as what you submit,
They've accepted what we've submitted every year.
It comes under contractual services, you guys.
Contractual services covers a variety of things. We hire an outside contractor every year to do the roadside mowing, which is mowing of the shoulders. We hire an outside contractor to do the brush trimming, which this year we did a large project on a number of roads, Half Township Road, Curtis Farm, a lot of roads got trimmed, White Point Estates got trimmed back. Smaller jobs, contractual services, some demolition work. This year was proposed to do a number of demolition jobs and we fell short of our target.
See, 100,000 for demo condemned properties. Do you have that many upcoming properties to demo?
We fell short on that. You know, we wait till they're condemned before we demolish them. We did fall short. The amount being condemned wasn't what we thought it was going to be.
There are plenty that could be, and we didn't do a very good job last year or even the year before. We've got to get around more briskly and condemn some of these.
We do have two demolition jobs upcoming. I'm trying hard to get them done before this fiscal year ends. One of them is an old hangar at the airport. We hire those jobs out. We hire different companies. I bid it out to come in and do the work.
So like the one, what was it, last year, the one on Highland Avenue, like where that got bid out, someone demoed it. I don't think we paid that one, right? That was someone that bought it and demoed it, the house on Highland Avenue.
The last one we did in conjunction with another contractor, was on Lakeview Street. There was some talk about the school buying it.
Was that the one with the roof that was like, you know, yeah.
We hired a contractor to come in with the equipment and we provided the hauling. We did it in conjunction. Okay.
I know which one you're talking about, George. Yes, you did hire a contractor over on Highland. The one that had the hole in the roof and things were growing in next to,
Right
Danny.
on the corner there.
No, the one Danny from Why Not Stop, I think
He bought the property afterwards.
Danny did,
I remember
bid
he
on that.
bid on it, was gonna do it himself, and then
Right.
the council.
Right, but we did it just before he bought that.
Yeah.
And part of the cost of that bid,
Within the, we
Yeah.
recouped the cost from, correct? Right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Some of this is tax acquired property, we get a demolition.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes. There's been houses that have been condemned that we went and demolished. The one on the corner of Taylor Street and Enfield Road. We did that in its entirety. We tore it down at all the time. Abated the asbestos, the whole 9 yards.
You have to pay to dispose of the asbestos.
You dispose of it separately, it gets enveloped in plastic in the container. And
Very expensive.
or more, the tipping fee is higher. Yeah, right.
Until we get our ACM site built.
Until we
Which may or may not allow ACM from off the mill site to go into it.
More likely will be acceptable, as long as it's within the town.
Well, and so long as the volume is held down.
Right.
Let's see. Calcium and salt and everything's going up, or?
We expect it to go up. It's shown that trend. And last year we appropriated more money for more calcium. I think you were on the roadway committee when we discussed that. So we increased that number volume wise.
Is that accurate, Dennis? I think it was in Lincoln News, 850 some tons sold last year.
We budget between 8 and 1,200 to participate in the state salt program. And that's our slot to get a price. They'll hold that to 110% above. So like 1,400 tons, they'll hold that same price for it. And down to maybe 700 tons, they'll hold that price. The 8 to 1,200 tons is what we project.
That's typical.
Those numbers have remained almost the same for my entire tenure. I provided those numbers to the Lincoln News. They come right off of our spreadsheet.
That's what I said. It is salt. Last time I was involved, it was like $30 a ton.
90 so.
Yeah.
What are you looking at the road construction? For paving,
400,000.
like for like what?
The tentative plan is to pave Town Farm Road in its entirety. And then we have some money left for this fiscal year. We're getting under drain replacements on Frost Street and Sweet Road in preparation to pave it. They have to go 2 years. They freeze and thaw cycle before we pave over them. So we're spending some money now to improve the drainage in preparation for 2-year future paving project. So this year we're going to pave Town Farm Road, and then whatever we can pave on Frost Street from the Route 2 side. First culverts in close to on the other side of the bridge there, and so we'll be able to get some of that binder. Frost Street's in terrible condition.
Is it just gonna be a skinny mix?
No, inch and a quarter binder, inch and a half surface. Or maybe vice versa, inch and a half binder, inch and a quarter surface.
How's the subgrade? Rock Street's always been a pain in the butt.
Cross Street's in terrible condition. If the cost to reclaim it would be astronomical, we wouldn't be able to afford it. Although we may end up reclaiming a short distance of it when we first turn on the road there.
How about drainage?
We are spending some money this year to improve the drainage. Under drains and ditching.
Yeah, if you can cut the water off, that's half the problem. It's too bad to put lipstick on a pig.
Well, the under drains had, like I said, have to go 2 years before we're gonna pave over them. So that's why we're doing them now. To let them, they have to warranty, the contractor has to warranty the work for 2 years. We're not gonna pave over it until the 2-year warranty is expired. And then if it passes muster on the 2 years, then we'll continue with the paving project.
Yeah.
But right now, there's no under drain improvements on Town Farm Road, so that'll be the next one paved.
Well, we're Frost Street, Lane Hill, I know we talked about that during the roadway meeting. So how much time you spend redoing that, and again, it's always been the opinion, like not to pave dirt roads, but the amount of time you spend on that road.
That was discussed in this year's roadway committee meeting. It was put on for a future topic of discussion, no decision was made. Okay. I am a proponent of paving Lane Hill.
What do you do with it now? Just treat it with calcium?
We grade it if it needs grading, and then calcium. We rebuilt that road a couple of years ago, just totally disintegrated in the winter time. Fuel truck went up it and just totally destroyed that road. And we basically rebuilt the entire road. I would very much like to see it paved.
One of the things we discussed is it's a couple roads that they spend, however many, say 100 hours in the summer doing all this work for, where they take that 100 hours, if it was paid, and go spend it doing something else, that they don't have to just keep doing the same work year after year.
Now, when you rebuild it, are you putting fabric once
We
you
put
on
filter
top,
fabric
and
down.
then you're putting subgrade gravel on that?
We did.
If you don't put the fabric down, you're wasting time.
Yeah, that was a big project for us.
There's no easements, is there, Dennis? Because the water comes a whole length of that hill. You can't. Probably nobody will give you one to get rid of it, break it up.
Yeah, you'd have a hard time getting rid of it. To get up and over that into that field there, it'd be a difficult time.
Yeah, to get home, you got the house over there, so it'd be awful nice to get it.
We put some check dams in there, which does help, but it doesn't alleviate the problem. But we're on 5 years on that ditch, on that rock effort in that ditch, so it's lasted some time.
There's a poor spot for that house too.
Yeah, that fella's yard, that last time we had the big rain last spring, that a lot of that road was down in that guy's yard.
For the 140,000 back, was that just putting it away, or is that for the actual, I can't imagine it's a purchase, right?
No, it's, we need to replace that backhoe this year. It's not the one that Public Works needs replaced, it's the one at the transfer station. But historically, that's the route that they've taken. Public Works gets a new backhoe, use it for a few years, then hands it over to the transfer station, which is what has happened now. The backhoe that currently resides at the transfer station is nearly falling apart. It starts up and it backs out the warehouse just fine, but the cab's ready to fall off of it. The frame's right, and it's a salt, it's the salt that's inside. So it needs a replacement. We really need to replace that. So historically, transfer the backhoe from Public Works down to the transfer station and then import a new one at the Public Works department.
Is there one or two guys down at the transfer and then that run that? Or?
They all can run it. They all know how to run it. Right now, it's restricted to one operator.
Yes, sir. The reason I'm asking is back this winter it was packed there. Front tire was pretty much off, and they'd run it to the point where it was just destroyed.
Those tires were solid tires, and we were trying to get the rest of the year out of them because we've had to replace those tires, and that's bad money. You know, those tires aren't $5, $400. We had to replace the front and back. So I really feel that we need a replacement. And so I got a budget number from one of the vendors, and it's about 140,000. The requirements, the backhoe's not required to do a lot of different work at the transfer station. It needs to load some dirt, it needs to load some mulch. Very rarely is the backhoe part of it used, occasionally, but not very often. So the scope of work is much narrower at the transfer station than at Public Works.
Right.
Well, it doesn't have to go out on the road and go to other places.
That's
Public Works does.
This is true as well.
You probably don't put a lot of hours on it at the transfer station either. do you?
No. I couldn't sit here and say 100 hours a year or 50 hours a year, but it's not a lot of hours.
Which one's at is that the Case one that's at the transfer station?
Case is at the transfer station.
Again, when I first got on the council, that was the first piece of equipment back in 2016, bought that brand new for Public Works, so. You also have any questions on Public Works? Move on to transfer station.
Almost.
You didn't get a new baler yet at the transfer station? That's still the old one you're limping along?
We're limping along.
Okay.
We've been putting money away for it.
Right. Didn't you have hydraulic leaks and stuff like
We've
that?
had hydraulic leaks, I replaced the pump a
Right,
couple of times, but that's not an overly expensive fix.
Right.
But
right.
the biggest problem with the baler is it's losing its shape. The body of it is being pressed outward.
Right, right,
And I mean, that's from years and years.
right.
I think that baler's from the 50s. The vintage model.
We've got our
money.
We got our money worth.
Is the recycling stuff down? So we can always sell the cardboard stuff. But we, at one time, the market's really bad on that.
The markets are not overwhelming right now. Still, cardboard is a lot of volume.
Right.
The price is not what it once was. plastic, number 2 plastic, which is separated, colored to clear. The clear is bringing about $1,900 a ton. The mixed is bringing about $60 a ton. So we separate ours, but it takes a long time to build up enough to make it. It takes over a year to build up enough inventory to make it worthwhile to ship it out.
And how about your glass? You said the glass was awful a long time ago.
Glass just remains.
Yeah.
We keep glass on speculation. And when we get a large amount, we can't find a place to sell it, I use it as fill somewhere. So we still keep it as speculation. You know, taking it out of the waste stream, which is
Right.
a savings on that end.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I always try to explain to people is, no matter if you get $1 for a
Break
contract,
even,
right.
like you're
Right.
saving, what is it now, like $100,
$95.
$95
Right.
a ton to take it out,
Right.
so you're making $96 a ton.
Are you making money on cardboard or no?
Cardboard right now is about $70 to $90 a ton, which is not, we're not making a lot of money.
Yeah.
But pennies.
Because you could encourage people to use that in landscaping by putting that down as weed protection and then putting the mulch on top. That'll buy them another year where they don't have to weed so heavy. So that would be a way to get rid of it if it wasn't losing money for you. But tip, make sure you get
You
cardboard
should
that's
put an
brown.
article in the paper about that.
Okay, all right.
Melissa, you're missing some numbers on page 74. The totals didn't come out on the tipping fee.
Park tipping fees.
Right.
We don't have any numbers that carried over, Dennis.
Yeah, the perk tipping fees are,
Is that the right amount?
that's the right.
Okay.
So
I
it's
will,
$168,600. 368,600.
yeah, I will put, fix the formulas.
The summary page kind of got me all excited because it says you're going to save 374,000, but it's
No, but the transfer station budget is reduced minimally, but it is reduced from last year.
there was missing the tipping fees.
That was a big one.
Yeah. I have been going through the departments we've already discussed and looking and making sure formulas work. I just haven't gotten to these two yet.
Mhm.
So yes, I have them both all flagged.
Did you get my email on it? When you sent the budgets out to us electronically, I caught that and I sent it back to you. I told you to check that.
I
But I
guess
know you
I got
didn't do
an
it.
email, but I don't remember the body of the email right now.
I
You
sent,
did send something back to me.
Yeah.
Was it on the tip budget?
well, it was on the tipping fee for the transfer station.
Oh, okay.
By my calculations, last year, our budget was $621,216. And what I have proposed this year is $605,000. So it's down a little bit.
Oh, yeah, it's down quite a bit on the cover page.
Yeah.
I should have taken note on that. That's what happens when you have so many formulas in a document and so many different people working on the document.
Well, that's why we have these meetings.
I'll probably have Cindy sitting across the desk from you and we'll go line for line and match everything.
Use Excel for this?
Hmm.
Use Excel for this?
Yes,
They don't have a budget program for municipalities, so
you can put it into Trio, but you don't get the detail that we have in this document.
okay. I just like to. Curious.
I could spend a few $1,000s and probably buy one. This one's worked well for us. I think I created this document itself probably 10 years ago. Sometimes formulas disappear. It's, I try to lock cells, but then it creates problems for the people on it.
Maybe you could answer this, Rick. Biofine, they're gonna use waste wood products. Is
That's
it
their current plan.
a specific species? Is it gonna be hemlock? Or can it be?
I don't know that answer.
I'm just wondering, this much wood at the dump, I think we're paying, just have somebody, if it'd be worth in the future having this all that stuff.
Yeah, but
in
they're not
the
looking to take anything that has contaminants in it,
Right.
meaning nails, screws, things like that.
Right, like I see whole truckloads of wood. In the past, we've had some. Shit.
I am hoping that when BioFine gets up and running, that they will show some interest in our brush pile and also our cardboard.
Cardboard,
Yeah.
yes.
Our cardboard.
Anything that they would take at no cost to us would be a plus.
The brush vendor used to come and grind the brush and take the chips as payment. It was an even trade. That's gone a little bit to his advantage. He charges us $2,000.
Western Field Power Plant's been idle because they can't get enough chips to run.
You come have ours for free.
Like infield, they haul their brush, the town does, up into the power plant site, and they have somebody come ship it.
The portable bathrooms worked out well.
It has
And isn't the life expectancy of that building 10 years?
a portable bathroom.
Right. When they originally when we really started, no?
I think it's much longer than that.
I do too, I think.
Yeah.
It'll be substantially more.
Okay.
I read this in the Bangor Daily. They were talking about PFAS, and Lincoln landfill was one of the ones listed as having a PFAS. Is that going to be an expense in the future? Or?
If we ultimately end up having to do something with it, but of course the landfill has no use other than to be a landfill.
It's capped, right? I'm surprised when I saw Lincoln on the list that's having PFAS.
It was for area. It was like my grandpa's property, and
Yeah.
I warned him that it's going to contaminate all the water and lakes and everything. That's where they. I have received nothing from the DEP
Yeah.
regarding that. We're on the honor system for maintaining that landfill. I have to once a year go inspect all the wellheads.
The article talked about Juniper Ridge down there as being a massive PFAS feature. Those 4, 5, 6 towns listed in addition to that. I was curious what made Lincoln jump out of everybody else.
Yeah.
They stopped testing that 8, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
They said we were done having to do the annual testing on it. It's been a long time.
They broke out after about 20 years.
Yeah, and so it's been close to 10 years since they've stopped testing it, every wellhead over there.
Like 3, but they only had it open for like 2 years, so. We're in the, like, really. I imagine it would be here by then.
Like I said, I get a lot of correspondence from the DEP, and I've received nothing to that effect.
I don't have any other questions on the transfer station.
Anything on the, they got 3 capital items, anything on the capital? How much money is put away for the baler?
Oh, I think it's in the neighborhood of 40,000.
I think we'd say like around 50 is the price for anyone?
For a new to us one.
You guys.
Yeah, some years we only put 4,000 towards that. Few years. And I think a couple of years, there was nothing.
Yeah, I think it's around 40,000. We'd have to dig and check.
So if the 8,000 goes in, would you be looking at probably trying to get one this upcoming?
Maybe one more cycle. Maybe one more cycle.
Wasn't it broken for a while and it took you a while to get a part for it?
That was the compactor itself.
Oh.
We have two balers, and so if one does go down with a pump, we can always use the other baler.
Okay.
And for Christmas time, when there's so much cardboard because of Christmas gift smell, we use both balers for cardboard. Let the plastic rest for a while.
Got a question. For the spring cleanup, are you guys taking cardboard? Do you pick up cardboard?
Yeah.
I have a ton of cardboard. If you're on here,
You
yeah.
sit in your garden now.
Really? Put it on your landscaping, then put your mulch on top. You get your mulch.
It's better than fabric.
It'd be fast.
But you're gonna peel the tape off.
I use that trick too. is
Right.
cardboard.
It works
And
great.
Grass clippings over on top of that.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people put in their soil too, shred paper.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not into garden.
Your mom's looks really nice though.
Yeah.
Well, Melissa needs it.
So a third of the price of the backhoe is being attached to the transfer station.
This is novel. This is new this year. I've never attempted that, but I think it's only fair that the transfer station pays some of it because they do utilize a backhoe also.
Otherwise, you'd be trading it in and getting that.
You will trade that case in on the new backhoe.
The one that's falling apart, the transfer station?
They'll give us something. They'll give us something.
Take whatever we can get for it.
Yeah, but they'll give us something. Like I said, it does start up and back out of the warehouse.
Just a
So
cab
that's
falling
worth-
off.
That's worth $500 right there.
You think you get more just
fall.
selling it?
That's
Because
what I'm
it's,
thinking.
I don't think so.
Our experience with selling things, be it police cars, fire trucks, pickup trucks, is very poor.
That was another reason to go with the leases, is that we were using these trucks and they were worth nothing. Selling them for $1,500 for, a single axle dump truck. And I wouldn't imagine we'd get much from the open market for that.
With the ash and stuff, it looks bad.
and the last time we had was just, again, we already sort of discussed it, with landfill, $1,500. That's just to send,
$1,500 is to bush hog it.
Yeah.
And there's a couple $100, $200 there for, in case we need well caps or locks. Which occasionally,
you only use bush hog once
once a year. And we incorporate that in the roadside mowing. And so we get a little bit better price that way.
The ash building down on Park Street, I assume the town must own that.
Yes.
Is that anything, Dennis? I haven't been in it for years. Used for storing plows, or would that ash be acidic and be a problem?
I would think the ash would be acidic, but I would have to research that to find out for sure.
I'm just trying to think of a building that would give you some storage, put some stuff on the cover that we already own.
Yeah, you and I were speaking the other day, I would like to get some of that stuff out of the sun. It's not the rain or the snow, it's the sun.
Sitting there and they get-
so this is our last meeting. Does anyone have anything else they want to discuss before we?
I would like the binders back when you feel you're done with your, books. Cindy and I priced out how much it costs to do one binder, and it's about $20 to do.
You want the,
The tabs. I need the tabs and the binder. I don't need the papers or anything. You don't have to do it tonight if you
I
don't
need
want to. But it does help me with my budget if I don't have to produce 20 of them every year. Yeah. Yeah. And Cindy I would be remiss if I did not follow her guidance too.
If you're a month or two before you get it back to us, That's okay.
That's fine, as long as I have them for next budget season.
You don't mind, fine.
Fine.
Otherwise it just goes in the trash.
So the notes that Kathy's been taking, I'm assuming she's gonna draft that up.
Yes, her and I have discussed
We'll
it.
present that at the
Yes.
workshop.
Yeah.
And we're all invited to the workshop.
and I
if you wanna
will-
go, Right?
I will, upload this meeting for her as well, so she can hear this. She's having a hard time hearing it on the screen. I think this microphone picks it up just a little bit better.
So all the corrections that we've made, you're gonna do a reprint.
Yeah, I've already been working on some of them, the ones we've already gone through.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for her to get me all the numbers that may have changed back.
And so will you be emailing that out to us?
I can email a PDF of that, yes.
Perfect. I think tonight, the only thing that I had noted of that was big was just the airport. Maybe look at investigate the hangar or something,
Yeah.
instead of spending 10K on the heating system for an old building, but
And I actually wrote that down for Kathy, just in case she didn't hear that.
And that is heat for somebody who might use it in an emergency. And we haven't heated it, sounds like we haven't heated it for over
A few years. Been a few years.
If we had $10,000, we didn't know what to do with it. I guess it probably could cut.
Do you all want a copy of the, budget emailed to you as well? Okay,
Yeah.
so that may not be able to go out in an email, so what I'll do is I'll send you a link to our Dropbox, which will have that.
Mhm.
And Alan, if you have an email address, that would be great, because I don't have one for you.
Pam does. Quincy, capital Q, QUINCIE, 16, Gmail.
does anyone have anything else before we adjourn? All right, we're adjourned.